Thank you, Artemis. Thank you, Valentino. Thank you, Tech Island, STEM for All, Women in Tech. It's an honor to be again here to present our studies and a lot of data. So I will ask for your patience as I go through numbers. I will try and stick to the more important ones. Both Artemis and Valentinos talked about the Tech Island objective of creating Cyprus as a technology hub, as an island of technology. So let's see how we are performing over these years. Our first and most important number is the impact on the gross domestic product or the gross value added of the economy, which we count using some assumptions. So I ask you to pay a bit of attention. In terms of the economic sectors, we have the ICT sector, which is let's say the core of the technology companies. But we also have a lot of technology in some other sectors. So in our calculation, we take also that into account. So let me say that the entire gross value added of the Cyprus economy is 32 billion, and we are talking about 2025 numbers. And we take the ICT sector, which accounts for 4 billion, which is by itself a very significant and important number. It's obviously around 12% of the total of GVA of Cyprus, but we also include in our estimate around 40% of the professional, scientific, and technical services, which they include a lot of potentially software development companies, IT-related, technology-related companies, which are classified based on the statistical codes under services. So, and this was also pointed to us by the Cyprus Statistical Service. So we take 40% of that sector as being attributed to technology. And this accounts for another 875 million of direct economic impact. And then we have another very important element of the technology in Cyprus, which is the fintech. This is classified based on the economic statistic codes under the financial and insurance activities. So we have made some data analysis about the traditional element of this sector. We took it out and we estimate that a minimum, and potentially this is a conservative number, a minimum of 20% of the financial and insurance activities is attributed to the technology. So we have another 600 million of direct economic impact coming from the financial sector, from the fintechs. So this gives us a total of 5.5 billion, which is a remarkable 17% of the total economy, of the gross value added of the economy. But then we go one step further and we also see how this direct effect has also some ripple effects, some indirect effects and induced effects, as we call them. So in addition to that 5.5 billion that we have, which is the direct impact, we then estimate based on some econometrics analysis and economic coefficients, the Leontief multiple as we call it, we estimate the indirect impact of these sectors into the economy, 100% of the ICT, 40% of the professional services, and 20% of the fintech. With the same logic, we have another 2.2 billion of indirect impact. And then we have added to this the induced effect. Induced effect is the spending, the individual spending or the household spending using the economical terminology, which is created by the employment of these sectors. So we have another 3.6 billion into the economy, which ends up at around 11.3 billion in the gross value added equation. Again, so the key numbers here is 17% direct impact of 5.5 billion and an indirect total effect on the GVA of 11 billion. This slide is almost the same. Sorry. Yes, it's almost the same, but it's not, so I got confused myself. Here we are referring to GDP. GDP and GVA are two different metrics of the economic output. GDP it includes taxes and government spending. We believe that GVA that we have presented is a more accurate calculation of the net effect, but because often in the discussions people use the GDP as the major metrics of an output of a country, we have made the similar estimate on those parameters. Again, the numbers are very close. Of course, now that we have added the government spending, our share drops a bit to 16.2, although the overall effect is 5.9, it's higher, and of the direct impact. And again, by the same calculation, we have the indirect impact, which goes around to 12 billion. So in terms of GDP, our direct effect is 6 billion, and the total indirect is 11.9. Now we'll move into employment figures, which are also quite remarkable. Here we see a trend of how the employment numbers have changed over the years in the same way that we have calculated the economic impact. So we take the ICT sector and percentages of the other sectors. And also we point out specifically with the green fonts there, the Cyprus employees in terms of full-time equivalent. And we see that in 2017, we had around 18,000 people working in this sector, Cypriots. And in 2025, this number rose to 32,000 almost. We have around growing the Cyprus numbers, the Cyprus employees numbers by around 6%, although there is a remarkable and very welcome growth of the foreign employees, which they have grown the non-EU nationals by 30% during this period. And various statistics show that. We see that the share of Cyprus employees has been smaller in recent years rather than previous years, but it's a smaller percentage of a much, much bigger pie, so the end number is definitely much higher. The total number of employees in 2025 working in this sector is 48,000, as I said, out of which 32,000 are Cypriots. Looking at the indirect effect now, and on the employment market, we see that there is an additional indirect impact of another 31,000 as we have estimated. So we have a total of direct and indirect job employment numbers in Cyprus in 2025 in the wider tech sector of around 80,000 employees. Next, I will be moving on, showing some statistics with trends over the year, comparison of the technology sector to our European Union peers and comparison to the rest of the economy. On this page, we have how the GVA of ICT across the entire Europe has been growing over the years versus the entire EU economy. So we have the total growth of the economy over this 10-year period, and I'm talking about the EU economy now, is 4.6% per annum, while the ICT has been growing at 6.7% per annum. So it's a European-wide phenomenon, of course, it's a global phenomenon that ICT sectors are growing much faster than the economy. The other thing that is, of course, very interesting to point out is how resilient this sector has been. And we point out specifically the pandemic period where the EU economy has contracted by 3% between 2019 and 2020, while the ICT sector has continued to grow at a small rate, but it was always growing over the 10-year period. During the pandemic, it registered a growth of 3%. This is the Cyprus statistics. In terms of Cyprus, we have the data for the last 6 years. The Cyprus economy has been growing at a rate of 7.9% per year. The ICT sector has been growing at a rate of 18.9% per year. And not only it has been growing, it has been very resilient. Again, we see in 2020, in Cyprus, we had a decline similar to the rest of Europe at 3% in terms of economy. Our ICT sector saved us the day. It grew by 21% and made up for most of the lost ground of the remaining economy. And even in good years where our GVA grew by 15% in 2022, the ICT sector had an astonishing 40% increase in that year. And as you see, in almost every year, it was a double-digit growth of the ICT sector in Cyprus. Comparing now to the share of the ICT sector to the entire economy, we see how important for Cyprus this is versus the rest of the economy. We rank third in Europe in terms of the share of the ICT sectors compared to the rest of the sectors. Ireland is first with 20%, Malta is second with 13.1%, and we have a share of 12.5%. We note there that we dropped one position from last year. We were second. Apparently, the ICT sector of Malta grew faster than the rest of its economy, but this is just a statistical reason. We still rank in the top 3 above countries like Estonia and other very well-performing countries. The European average is 5.6. So European-wide, the ICT sector accounts for around 5.6 of the economy. In Cyprus, it's 12.5. And this statistics is only for the ICT-specific sector. It doesn't count the other effects that we have in the fintech and the professional services. Of course, the comparison is, let's say, consistent with the rest of Europe. Moving on, comparing our ICT growth in the last 10 years, we see that we have outperformed every other country in Europe. In these 10 years, 2016 to 2025, the GVA of the ICT sector has grown by 435%, so 4 times. It was 1 billion, it became 4. Ireland has also been performing quite remarkably well as Malta. They have also around or above 400% growth in that sector. While we are, of course, much above the European average, which is 86%, around 8% per annum, that means. But we are performing much higher. In terms of contribution per employee in this growth, we see that, again, Cyprus has been, the ICT sector, the employment sector, has been growing quite fast over the years. But the most remarkable point in this slide is while the average EU per employee contribution to the GVA in the ICT sector, sorry, I said that very confusing. The average contribution per employee of the ICT sector to the economy, the EU average is 116,000. The Cyprus average is 158. So effectively, we have less employees for more output. So our employees in this sector, they are overperforming and they have performed better than the European average employee in the ICT sector. This is also, let's say, supported by this graph, which shows that on average, Cyprus is on the average of Europe at 5% employee of the employment market works in the ICT sector. So comparing what I just said a while ago, the ICT sector is almost 13% of the economy, while the employment is just 5% of the employment market. So these employees are much more productive than the average Cyprus employee, and this compares well with the rest of Europe as well. Moving now quickly into the chapter of foreign direct investment, we want to point out how the FDI in the ICT sector has been growing from 2019 at 10%. We have reached now 17% in 2024. Again, we have ICT has been outperforming the other sectors of the economy. We also see some statistics. In some areas, we need improvement, and we understand this. We rank 25th out of 139 countries in the Global Innovation Index. I think we can perform better given all the growth around our technology sector. We rank only 17th out of 27 European countries in the European Innovation Index, and that definitely needs improvement. But we are second out of 18 economies in our region here in Southeast Mediterranean and the Middle East. We have high-skilled workforce, we have good processes, but we also need some areas where we can improve, and I will revert in a second about that. So, penultimate slide, the key takeaways, the key numbers, let's say, is that the tech sector contributed around 16% of the GDP directly, which is equivalent to around 6 billion. If we add to that the indirect effect, this effect doubles to 12 billion. Then also I have spoken about the direct and indirect employment, which is a total employment force of around 80,000. In terms of comparing with the EU, we rank first in terms of growth of the GVA of the ICT sector and the employees. Our GVA contribution per employee is way higher than the rest of Europe, and our FDI has been growing, reaching 17%. Now, where we believe there are areas which we can try harder and more to improve further the environment is to further promote and enhance our economic stability. We have elections coming up, so that is crucial what will happen. About connectivity, it's important for us to continue the path to join Schengen as soon as possible and also improve our airport connectivity. About the banking, we need to attract more international banks to be able to, let's say, transact more easily with the rest of the world. In terms of education, and this is, of course, the stage here will be quite focused on this subject, we have to increase the number and capacity of private schools to attract more expatriates, to make it easier for them to move their families here. We need to develop, improve the skills of the existing workforce and population. And of course, we need to promote the STEM career path in our public and private schools. And a couple of other items that we believe are quite important as well is the digitalization of government and our continuous enhancing of the legal and judicial system so that they are very as effective as we like them to be. I gave a lot of data in a very short time. I hope that you keep the most important, which is this slide, is 16% of GDP at 6 billion, and we are the best in Europe in terms of growth. Thank you, everyone.